Fondant is the great divider. You have people who love it and people who hate it. I'm in the second group. The good news is you don't need fondant in order to make fun cupcake decorations. And in this video, I'm going to prove it by making 2 types of curling-themed cupcakes using buttercream, some Oreo cookie crumbs, and a handful of little gems known as candy wafers. I'm Susan, and you're watching Weekend Cupcakes. So let's jump right in with our first cupcake, the curling rock. Now, there are literally thousands of great ideas out there, but most of them use fondant, which I try to avoid like the plague. So we'll need to get creative using other items. I have a bowl of gray buttercream that I made by adding a small amount of Wilton's Black. I'm going to add some crushed Oreo cookie crumbs to the frosting. 3 scoops should do it. Mix everything together. Make sure to scrape the bottom of your bowl so that the cookie crumbs are mixed all through the buttercream. The cookie crumbs will give our buttercream that speckled granite look, which is typical of a curling rock. Okay, I think that looks good. All of our cupcakes have a slight dome on top. However, I want all of them to be as flat as possible. So what I'll do is line up a serrated knife with the edge of the cupcake liner to slice that dome off. The cupcake is frozen, so it might be a bit difficult. It's taking a few cuts to get it completely flat, but it's working. While the cupcake is still frozen, I'll use my offset spatula and some white buttercream to do a crumb coat. With the top of the cupcake cut off, there will be crumbs once it's thawed, so it's especially important to do the crumb coat while the cupcake is frozen. I got that bright white color with Wilton's White. Spread the frosting right to the edge of the liner and smooth it out. This will go in the fridge while I prepare my piping bag. All right, the cupcake is out of the fridge and the crumb coat is hard. I'm going to mark the center of the cupcake. Lift the cupcake directly in front of you and use a toothpick to mark the center. I have a large bag filled with the gray cookie crumb frosting and fitted with a 1A piping tip. Hold the tip about ½ an inch above that center dot on the cupcake. Squeeze and really let the frosting balloon out. Stop squeezing, grab a hold of your cupcake if necessary, do a circular motion, and come off. We'll refrigerate this again for 10 minutes so the frosting gets hard. The cupcake is out of the fridge again, and the gray frosting is now hard. As you can see, there are a lot of grooves on it, so I'm going to smooth them out. I have a cup of boiling water, and I'm going to dip my offset spatula in it to heat it up. You could also run your spatula under hot water, but I find that the cup method uses less water. Wipe your spatula dry and then run it over the frosting. You don't have to smooth out the very center, as we'll be scooping some of the frosting out of the stone. Just smooth out the edges and the sides. I'm using very light pressure because the boiling water heated up my spatula really well. Dip your spatula back in the hot water when needed. Just keep smoothing the rock as best you can. Once that's done, we'll put the cupcake back in the fridge again to harden it up. Okay, so the cupcake is out of the fridge and the frosting is hard once again. We're going to cut a shallow round crater in the center. I'm using the Wilton 2A to mark out the area. Hold your cupcake up so it faces you and place the piping tip in the center. Once you find the center, put your cupcake down and then push and twist the piping tip down into the buttercream to get a nice clean cut down the sides of the crater. You don't need to go deep. So now you have a guide to help you dig out the center. I'm using my tapered spatula to scoop the buttercream. I'm starting more towards the center. Turn your cupcake to slowly scoop the buttercream away and work your way towards the edge. The crater really doesn't have to be deep. All right, now that the center is empty and I just have the edge to remove, I'm going to hold the spatula towards me and pull the edge towards the center. Clean your spatula each time. Once you've scooped out the center, run your spatula along the edge to smooth it out. So there we have our shallow crater. This is going back in the fridge for 10 minutes to harden up again. We're going to use candy wafers to make the handles and the top surface area where the handle is affixed. So, what are candy wafers anyway? Candy wafers are little discs made with a chocolate-like substance consisting mostly of sugar and vegetable oil. They come in a variety of colors and most commonly taste like vanilla or cocoa. You simply melt them and then shape or mold them into pretty much anything you want. They're super easy to work with, making them perfect for beginners. If you're a bit more advanced, you can definitely use real chocolate if you're comfortable dealing with all of its intricacies. In preparation for the melted candy wafers, I've prepared my bag with a Wilton No. 5 piping tip, and I'm turning the bag down. I have some yellow candy wafers in a microwave-safe bowl. Place them in the microwave and heat them in 10-second intervals. After each interval, stir the wafers. They're not even melted right now, but you still have to stir them. Place them back in the microwave and heat for another 10 seconds. Stir them again and then repeat for another 10 seconds. All right, they're starting to melt a little. Back in the microwave they go for another 10 seconds. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Even though they're not completely melted, you can keep stirring them and let the residual heat melt the remaining wafers. Just keep stirring them and squishing them with your spoon. Okay, there we go. The wafers are all melted and smooth, so it's time to place them in the piping bag. Unfold the bag very carefully so it doesn't make a mess, and then gently push the liquefied candy wafers towards the tip. We need a 90-degree angle for the handles, so Max created a template out of an empty granola box and covered it with some wax paper. I'm going to pipe some lines of melted wafers over the box. Touch the box with your tip, and then lift the tip off the box while you squeeze the liquid out. Go over the edge and back down the other side. When you get the length you want, touch the tip back down. These will go in the fridge for a few seconds. While they're in the fridge, I'm going to hold the bag of melted wafers and keep it warm with my hand and fingers. This will allow the wafers to stay melted. So for this next part, I'll need a helper because we'll have to work fast before the melted wafers harden up in the bag. Max has taken out the 5 cupcakes we're working on, and he'll prepare the handles. Cut the wax paper off the box and remove the handles from the wax paper. Cut one side of the handle down to about 1/4 inch. Fill the crater with the melted wafers, starting from the sides and moving towards the middle. Then tap the cupcake to level out the liquid. Pick up one of the handles with some food-safe tweezers and place the short end into the liquid wafers. Hold for a few seconds while the liquid in the crater hardens. And just like that, our curling rock is completed. So we'll be making a bunch of these yellow curling rocks, and then we'll repeat the exact same process, but this time with some red candy wafers. And here they are. I'm really proud of these cupcakes. I mean, let's be honest. Compared to the real thing, they look pretty darn close, if I do say so myself. A quick note about using candy wafers. Always keep in mind that you should only melt them once. Although technically they can be remelted, their quality will degrade significantly, or they may end up seizing. As you gain experience, you'll get better and better at preparing just the right amount for your project, wasting as little as possible. Our next cupcake will be the curling target, or house, as the experts call it. In our continued effort to avoid using fondant, we tried so many different ways to decorate these cupcakes, it would blow your mind. If you want to have a good laugh, watch this video until the end. We'll show you a compilation of all the goofs we went through before getting a decent result. I have a printout of the house that's the same size as the top of the cupcake. I've stuck it on a piece of cake board and taped some wax paper on top. and once again we'll be using candy wafers to create the house. The first step is to create the white dot in the center. I've already prepared the bag by turning it down and cutting a very small hole at the tip. We're going to microwave just 4 or 5 white candy wafers, as we don't need a lot to create the small dot. Since we have such a small amount, I'm just going to heat them for 5 seconds at a time, and then stir them after each interval. While I'm doing this, go ahead and hit the like button if you're enjoying this video. Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future endeavors. Okay, here we go. It's melting. Another 5 seconds should do it. So even though they're not all melted, just keep stirring and crushing the hard ones. The residual heat will melt all of them. So we'll place this small amount of melted candy wafers in the bag. Unfold the bag and then push the liquid down towards the tip. Slowly squeeze it out onto that center dot. That's all there is to it. You can leave it at room temperature or put it in the freezer to harden it quickly. For the remaining amount of melted wafers, I'm going to squeeze it out as I don't want it to harden in the bag. We'll be using a new bag for the other white ring on the house. We'll melt about 5 red candy wafers in the microwave. Let's heat them in bursts of 5 to 10 seconds at a time. Don't forget to stir them even if they're not melted yet. Okay, this is good. Just stir and let the residual heat melt the remaining wafers. We'll scoop this into a bag that's already folded down and has a small hole in the tip. I'm squeezing the spoon and using my thumb to push the melted wafers off the spoon. While I unfold the bag, I'm holding the tip so I don't accidentally squeeze out the liquid. Push it down to the tip. Slowly squeeze the melted wafers out around the white center and fill out the red area. You can use the tip of the bag to spread it out a bit. That's going back in the freezer for a few minutes. For the white ring, I have 7 candy wafers to microwave. We'll start with 10 seconds and go through the motions once again. As I explained earlier, the key is to heat the wafers in small increments, and just enough so that they end up melting from residual heat. All right, let's put this in the bag, unfold it, and push the liquid towards the tip. Slowly squeeze it out around the red and fill out the white area. Again, you can use the tip of the bag to help spread the liquid out. Once this is done, we'll put our target back in the freezer for a few minutes. I've prepared my bag for the blue candy wafers. I made the hole in the bag a bit bigger than the other ones because we'll have a lot of blue to spread around the ring. So we'll melt 7 candy wafers in the same way we did for the other colors. Just remember not to overheat them. Stir after every single cycle to check for signs of melting and let the residual heat work its magic. All right, let's put that in the bag. Very carefully unfold the bag and push the liquid down to the tip. For each new ring of candy, make sure to overlap the previous color, as this will close the gap between the rings. Slowly squeeze the candy out around the white and fill out the blue area. Try to get the candy all the way to the edge of the blue outline. Once this is done, we'll freeze our masterpiece one last time. I have some blue frosting that I made with Wilton's Royal Blue. We'll use a large bag with a Wilton 1A round tip. Let's fill the bag with the frosting. Unfold the bag. Push all the air bubbles out and then push the frosting towards the tip. Twist the end to tighten the bag. Hold the tip at a 90-degree angle above the cupcake. Squeeze a big dollop of frosting on the cupcake and let the frosting balloon out a bit. Then place the cupcake directly above the house and push it down until the frosting reaches the edge of the cupcake. Once this is done, we'll place our contraption in the freezer for 10 minutes. The cupcake is out of the freezer and the candy wafers are not stuck to the wax paper anymore, so we can just pick it up. There you have the big reveal of what the house looks like. The lines are a bit wobbly and the frosting didn't go all the way to the edge, but it's still much better than any of the other ones we tried. We'll get to those other ones in a minute, but for now, we're going to place a few stones to hide some of the imperfections. I have a bag of gray frosting that I made with some Wilton's Black and a Wilton No. 4 round tip. Hold the bag at a 90-degree angle above the cupcake. Squeeze, let the frosting balloon out, stop squeezing, and come off in a circular motion. We'll place a couple more stones here and there. I have some red frosting that I made with Americolor's Super Red and a Wilton No. 2 round tip. We're going to place some red dots on top of the stones. Hold the tip above a stone, lightly squeeze, let the frosting balloon out a bit, and then come off in a circular motion. We'll do this again on one more stone, and then we'll do the same with some yellow frosting. And there you go. 2 points for the yellow team. So I've decided to fill in the gap that appears between the frosting and the hardened candy. I'm using a small spatula to add frosting on the side of the cupcake. I think this gives it a nicer finish. And there we have our final masterpiece, the house for our curling cupcakes. Looks pretty cool, but it wasn't always all fun and games. Here's how our decorating method evolved up to what you just saw. Enjoy a good laugh at our expense. We initially thought we could pull it off by piping a thick layer of buttercream to make the circles. I used a cake turntable to pipe the colored rings around a dollop of white frosting. The whole process was excruciatingly long because I had to flatten and adjust each ring with an offset spatula. I also refrigerated the cupcake between each ring to harden the frosting, with the goal of protecting each previous ring from getting damaged by the piping tip. I even went as far as adjusting the gaps with a toothpick, if you can believe that. The cupcake almost looked nice as is, but we wanted a perfectly flat surface. So we flipped the cupcake upside down on a piece of parchment paper, froze it for 10 minutes, and then pulled it off. The end result was disappointing to say the least. The gaps all got smudged, the circles looked completely deformed, and the surface wasn't even that flat. Our next attempt turned into a two-person job. My idea was to stabilize my piping arm with my other hand and pipe a thin layer of frosting with the Wilton 102 while Max spun the turntable. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but it quickly turned into a clown show. For example, Max started the white ring by spinning the turntable the wrong way. As for me, I had a hard time piping consistent amounts of frosting, and my piping tip kept smearing the frosting from the previous ring. The basic idea was still promising, though, so we didn't give up. By the blue ring, we were a well-oiled machine, but the ring was still very inconsistent. Of course, we wanted a perfectly flat surface too, so we flipped it upside down and mashed it on a piece of parchment paper. We didn't obtain the nice flat surface we were hoping for because there wasn't enough frosting under the rings to flatten everything down. We really wanted a perfectly flat surface, so we decided to try a buttercream image transfer. Max created a template for the house, and we stuck it on some cake board with a piece of wax paper on top. In order to make a successful buttercream transfer, the buttercream needs to be really, really soft, almost like a liquid. So we tried melting the buttercream into many different levels of softness without ever getting the result we wanted. The buttercream never ended up spreading well enough to fill those darn gaps. We also had issues with the consistency of the colors when we warmed up the buttercream to make it softer. So we ended up trying another image transfer, but with a softer recipe of buttercream frosting. Our hope was that softer buttercream would flatten better when turned upside down. Unfortunately, that recipe turned out to be complete crap.
F***ing hell. This is worse than what we already have.
Yes.
So after all of our experiments, we went back to our list of must-haves. In order to make a batch of awesome curling house cupcakes, we wanted a surface that is as flat as possible in order to mimic the ice of a curling rink, colored rings that are as round and concentric as I can possibly make them, no gaps between each colored ring, and a decorating method that wouldn't take an eternity. And that's when we got the idea to make an image transfer using candy wafers instead of buttercream. In liquid form, they don't contain any air bubbles and they spread really well, which means our surface would be as flat as can be. Each new ring would literally fuse with the previous one, ensuring no gaps. And we could get everything done in a fairly short amount of time compared to all the other stuff we tried. As for the rings, they're not perfectly round, but they are concentric, and a quantum leap from our buttercream rings. So there you have it. I hope this video has inspired you to experiment with different cake decorating products and to think outside the box when you want to make some fun cupcake designs. Thanks for watching, and happy baking!